Okay, so we're recording. It's 6:30 here, so I'll get started. And topic 9 is, week 9, topic 8 is pretty important. And essentially what it is, it's that's where we're really starting to use the concepts that we've shared to be able to really use them as tools to be able to exercise our leadership and management capabilities. So this is a really key area, this topic. And again, it's the last topic of test 2, and I'm going to talk about that because the test is next week. And any questions before I get started at all? You can unmute and ask a question if you like. We all good? Okay, Hans, were you going to ask a question? Go ahead. Hans, you have your hand up here on this piece. Okay, well then we'll move on. You can type a message if you like on the chat, and I'll be watching the chat as well. So again, it's topic 8, and here's the deliverables for the week. And you can see that there's an individual submission, and then there's a group submission. And we have a lot to cover, so again, I'm going to be going a little bit quickly to go through to make sure we cover all the materials. And then I'm alerting you as well is that, pay attention to where I have the yellow highlights, and in some cases I have yellow boxes, and in other cases I have yellow highlights with emboldened sentences or underlines. So those are all key areas to work from, to get a sense of, okay, this is where to focus your studies. You go from here to the topic slide decks, and in the topic slide decks, then you get the information you need, and then you'll find in the video recordings done by Professor Power a lot more detailed, and you really understand, the intimate details of those concepts. And then if you still don't get what you need, you go to the course outline and take a look at what chapters are dedicated to these topics, and then read inside the chapters to get more knowledge, right? So that's where we're coming from right now. So again, we start with the participation activities, and participation of 8A is about going to the Fiedler least preferred scale document, and that's right in topic 8, and it's just below the post for the participation topic 8A, and then you go into there, you fill out the survey, and then answer the question. And I've got a slide down here. I'll get into just a little more detail about that when I get there. The next one is the group submission, and it's about the role of the organization for developing and sustaining a diverse and inclusive workplace. And so I've given you a few slides alongside this participation topic 8B to be able to give your group some key considerations to be able to address that particular participation topic. And have a look here. There's very many of the surveys in this topic. It's almost near the end of all the surveys that you're going to be doing. There's going to be a few more as you go through. And I want you to remember that in topic 13, in participation topic 13B, you'll have to take screenshots of all these surveys and show me those screenshots to the point of at least 25 of them, so you'll get 3 bonus marks for doing these surveys as well. And read the instructions around that, because there's 1 or 2 surveys that we've dealt with already, and that doesn't make up part of that complement that you need to hit on those numbers. So there's instructions there. It'll give you the information, and again, if you don't understand them, you need some clarification, just write me an email, and I'd be happy to be able to explain anything like that, right? Okay, so these are the 2 participation activities for the week, and then we get into the test. So the test for you, your Z stream is Wednesday evening, and the same time as the webinar, and it'll be the duration of the webinar. And again, 50 multiple choice and a few true and false questions to answer. It'll take up the full 80 minutes. It's the same remote piece where you need to have your lockdown browser tested and your web camera tested so that there's no problems. And again, you know, if you have a Chromebook, there's extra precautions that you have to take. And if you need additional information, you know, go to Blackboard and you'll see, you know, Lockdown Browser 2023, and there's more details on what to look for. And you know, and that's in the navigation panel on the left-hand side of your homepage for Blackboard. All right, so again, we're going to cover chapters 5, 6, 7, 8. So tonight, you know, we're finishing up on, topic 8. So topics 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we'll go from there. And then I will put out an announcement sometime in the next few days to kind of cover off what I've just been talking about in terms of the test. Okay, so any questions there? Does anybody have a question? You can unmute. We're all good? Ready to go forward? You want to give me some thumbs up? You know, tell
Sir,
me
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So the test 2 is going to be available from March 10th to 15th, any day of next week?
No, it's the time. It's basically the time of the webinar. So you got to log in by 6:30 and yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks for that question. You know, and I get that question asked a few times, and so I appreciate that. Hi, Somi. Okay, so what is you know, motivating and leading all about? And again, you know, where you're going in terms of your business cohort at this time in you know, in the history of business, things have changed a lot, right? The pandemic has really kind of pushed a lot of business approach onto, you know, virtual teams and everything else. So there's a lot more to consider in terms of how you're being affected as a business practitioner. You take a look at, you know, where global trading is, and global trading is not on a straight line going up. It's on a logarithmic curve, which means there's more and more global trading done every year. And again, because of that, well then, yeah, you're working different time zones. So cross-cultural leadership is really key because you're going to be working with different types of people, with different national cultures, with different corporate cultures. And so that you better understand corporate culture and national culture, and then understand that, you know, the only thing that, you know, that is constant in our world today is change, and the change cycles are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and you really need to understand, you know, the difference between transformation and change management. So transformation is the big you know, the big shift to something new because of all the different trends that are coming through and the way businesses is changing. And then change management is really the tools and the framework to be able to move transformation, you know, to its vision outcome. And another thing that you need to understand as well is that, you know, I worked at TELUS, right? And, you know, while I was at TELUS, a new CEO came in to run TELUS and wanted to change the strategy. And if you want to change that strategy, sometimes you have to change the culture to actually affect the strategy properly. Guess how long that transformation took? 5 to 6 years. So you have a lot, you know, a lot of time there, and you need to use the tools of change management to be able to get there. And it's not easy. And you know, I'm going to talk about change management at the end of this webinar as well. But it's so important. So these are key concepts and really working aspects of, you know, doing management and leadership, right? So so that's the key around motivating and leading. And again, we're going to kind of make the distinctions between leadership and management. And I've been saying all along is that in today's world, you know, even if you're a manager, you need some of those leadership capabilities to be able to make a difference in the world. But for test purposes, we're going to talk about the distinctions, and then you're going to key in on the, you know, on the yellow highlights and the the bolded script and the lines that I'm showing you and a lot of these areas where I'm doing bolding and then overviews, they're related in many cases to definitions. So in this particular one here, where you have the yellow, let's talk about that. So a leader is someone who can influence others and provide vision and strategy to the organization. So not only do they have to develop, the vision and the strategy, they have to articulate the strategy. So that's a key function of leadership itself. And why? Because leadership is the process of influencing and inspiring individuals or groups towards achievement of goals. So that's a very distinct part of leadership. And oh, by the way, even if you're a manager, you need some of that to be able to change behaviors, to have followers aligned to the goals of the organization and then reach the outcomes of the vision. So that's really key. Okay, so what it comes down to, what's the role of the leader? Well, building a unifying vision, developing a strategy, getting people on board, focus on the results, innovate for future, and then actually lead yourself in terms of being a role model. And the thing is that people, a human nature, they judge people by their behaviors. They judge themselves by their own intentions. And as a leader, then it's very important that you not only role model what's going on, but you keep explaining why you're doing things and showing your intentions and connecting those intentions with the overall intentions of the vision and the strategy. And that's really important to be able to get alignment, to kind of engage people to follow you. And it's all about the why. And I'm going to talk about the why with Simon Sinek. I know I bring it up quite a few times, but Simon Sinek is one of my heroes. So I've got about 2 or 3 slides down the road here. I'm going to pick that up and show you what's going on. But okay, so we talked about the leader. Now the role of the manager, we said that the leader, provides the vision and the strategy, meaning develops and articulates. But the manager's role, key, is to implement the vision and the strategy. And that's by providing a clear direction, clearly communicating the goals to employees, finding the right people to put in the right positions to do the right things right? Motivating employees to reach each objective. Although leadership has a motivation function as well, and that's an overall motivation, from shaping the culture and setting up the overall reward system in the organization, through the executive branch, so to speak. And then the manager sets the appropriate deadlines, checks with employees, making sure that they're making progress. So how do you do that? What gets measured gets done, using key performance indicators to measure that success and go back and coach. And you'll see on this right here, basically the role of the manager gets right back to the management 4 functions of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And we'll get into that in a little more detail. But also one thing to remember is that the manager makes the strategy adjustments as necessary. So let me talk a little bit about Henry Mintzberg. Not only is he a management theorist, but also he's a professor at McGill University in Montreal, Canadian, bilingual by the way, but he's also a guru in strategic planning and strategy. And what he's talked about is that it's one thing to get a group together, develop this strategy, and then just go out and do it. But it's never it's never perfect, and you have to adjust. And you need a learning organization, and that's through management. That's when I talk about making strategy adjustments as necessary, it's the managers that bring back the feedback and change the strategy to be able to be a lot more relevant. So essentially, the strategy has to start and then work towards becoming an emerging strategy. And it's that emerging strategy that really makes it work properly. because it's adjusted to the environment, it's adjusted to some of the conditions, and it's reaffirmed some assumptions, and it's kind of changed some assumptions on how it should work. So the role of the manager kind of brings that back through implementation. So you got to think of that as well. Okay, so here's my friend here, Simon Sinek, but listen to what he says. You know, he talks about why, and I'd recommend that you go to this link and just listen to a portion of it, because it makes so much sense. You know, Sinek presents a simple yet powerful idea. Most successful and influential companies and leaders start with the why of their business. And why? Why? It's because it relates to purpose. You know, and it gets to this thing, I think I've shared this with you. This is my layer cake framework for planning. And you know, you start right at the bottom with beliefs and core values, and your behaviors or attitudes around your core values. That's your identity, all right? And that's fundamental. That's where it comes from, because you know the why is you know, it's tied into our values, and then what does it do? It shapes into purpose, all right? See the why? And about this layer cake is that, you know, the premise around this: if one layer crumbles, all the layers above it crumble, right? Because it doesn't have enough supportive foundation, you know, if that layer crumbles. So it's got to be, you know, it's got to be foundational, you know, as you go into each step. So you can see that the why is right down here with the culture. You know, it's just above the identity part of what's going on. So it's so important, because that's what everything builds on, is the why. And if you can explain to people, you know, why they're doing something, and tie their role and get them to see themselves, you know, in the shared vision, then you've engaged them. And that's why it's so important. And that's why, you know, people who explain why they're doing things are so successful. So that's my little advertisement. And I'd like you to kind of take advantage of this link and get to see. And by the way, Simon Sinek at one time had the third most popular TED Talk in TED Talks, you know, when he first started out. Okay, so here's now where I make those distinctions between managers and leaders. And here's the piece, all right? So managers implement. It's all about implementation, the vision and strategies. And their focus is on the what. What are they doing, and how are they doing the what, okay? Whereas leaders, you know, they provide the vision and strategy, you know, they create it, and they create it, you know, with input from the organization, and then they articulate it, and that gives direction and guidance, focusing on terms of why the organization is doing this. So it's the big why, and the big how. And the big how, you know, for leadership is basically breaking down the overall strategy and tactics, so that it gives a sense of how that overall strategy can be executed, right? So this is, you know, this how on the managers, it's a lot more on getting the stuff done. And this how is a lot more around, you know, what components do you have to satisfy to be successful, okay, in terms of tactics. But if you look at this as well, you look at the words in here: planning, organizing, controlling. You know, it's all part of the four functions of management. Whereas if you take a look at what the leaders are doing, you know, they're creating a vision, setting the direction, they're aligning people to the vision, they're communicating, they're motivating and mentoring people, you know, they're creating change, right? And what are they doing? They're driving transformation, okay? So another one of my favorite books, you know, Switch, it's by the Heat brothers, and it's a basic change management book. And I can't say enough about, you know, understanding how to you know, execute on change management as a leader manager. Because that's most of the thing that you're doing, because all organizations in this point in time are transforming to find their place, you know, in the new digital economy. And if they break it down to the three areas. One is, you know, they look at a rider on an elephant, right? So they say one is to direct the rider. Well, you know, how do you direct the rider? Well, basically, through the vision and the leadership. So there's a leadership function that directs the rider. We're talking about change management here in terms of undergoing a transformation. And then the leaders, they're motivating. And the second piece is motivating the elephant. Really, it's the emotional mind. So how does a leader create the conditions in terms of culture, in terms of a reward system, in terms of understanding the followers? And it's this famous FM station I keep talking about, WIIFM. And for a follower, that's what's in it for me. So by really finding the enablers that will allow followers to see themselves in the shared vision has a big part in engaging them to be able to, again, support the goals that will get you to the vision outcomes. And you can see here, from a manager's point of view, it's a lot about shaping the path, helping people succeed. What do they need? In terms of budgeting, in terms of organizing, in terms of finding the right resources for them, in terms of taking away some of the barriers, and then creating some order so that they can do that. So you can see that there's two really big components, managing and leading, but in most cases they come together, but understand the distinctions, because there's a lot of test questions that are going to cover that, okay? So that's where that's going. All right, so here's another area now, and this is kind of, I hope, giving you some rationalization for all these surveys that we're putting you through. So this is trait theory. And again, you can see a lot of highlighting here in yellow and underlining. So trait theory of leadership suggests that certain inborn or innate qualities and characteristics make someone a leader versus someone who is not a leader. So it makes the distinction. And these qualities might be personality factors, they may be physical factors, they may be intelligence factors, and so on, or a combination thereof, right? And so that's what you've been doing. And I keep on telling the classes is that for all these surveys that you're doing, a lot of managers out there pay thousands of dollars to find out where they sit on those various elements of management principles and traits and whatever to become, a master of a business practitioner. All right, so you're doing this for all the right reasons, and what I'd recommend as well is keep this information for the future. All these surveys to really get a sense of where's your baseline, because it's all about planning, right? Where do you want to be? Where are you now? That's the baseline, and how you're going to get there. So it'll really help you develop yourself to be able to come, to be in that top 20% and always have, work for you out there in the working world. And one of the applications of the trait approach is that by participating in various tests, candidates, they can benchmark, they see how they're doing in terms of the standards out there, and assess how strong or weak they are in terms of leadership skills. But one of the things I want to just bring your attention to is that, they say, well, leaders are born, but some leaders, can be trained, and don't lose sight of that. The reason why, that organizations look at the trait approach is because, think of it, when they're recruiting somebody, if that individual is showing the traits of leadership to begin with and has some keen strengths that are an asset to the organization, well, there's a lot more to work with. So that's why they're going with that. But it doesn't mean that, maybe you're weak in certain traits that you can't, work. And it's an individual thing that you need to do. You can't work to improve yourself to be able to be, more effective in what you're doing. And you look at some of these things, like Myers-Briggs is one of the key tests to really get a sense of, where your leadership traits are, as well as the leadership trait questionnaire. And so I'd strongly recommend that you take a look at, where Myers-Briggs is and where you are in terms of, the four areas that they quantify. Okay, so here's another slide, and it's all about applying trait theory. I'm not going to cover this, but I came across this article and video, and I think that it would serve you well. It's a good 14 minutes, and this lady Jen is an Indeed career coach, and she explains, the top leadership styles. And we're going to talk about contingency, management contingency theory and whatever. And you should have at least 4 or 5 different types of styles that you can adjust to based on a situation. And we all know this. I mean, we all have a predominant style. I have a predominant style, and I know what that is. And I'm more aware of it. But I had to adjust in certain areas, and if we had more time, I'd get into some examples of how I learned that I needed to switch gears in terms of who I was managing at the time. But this is a really good slide to kind of take in, and it's worth the time to listen to this lady. Okay, so again, now we're back to some highlighting and theories on leadership. So trait theories of leadership. So what do? They isolate characteristics that differentiate leaders from non-leaders. All right, that's not to say that those non-leaders, can't improve, but essentially, that's sort of the telling piece. And we're going to learn as well is that from an emotional intelligence evaluation, you can really get a good sense of who's going to be a strong leader and who may not be a strong leader. And we've got a slide to talk about that a little bit as well. So, do all effective leaders have the same characteristic? Absolutely not. Are people born leaders? Well, some are, but some develop. And, just take a look at Napoleon. When we talk about some, it's not a trade secret that even physical attributes, allow people to advance in organizations. If you're a strapping male with a commanding voice, sometimes that gets you preference in getting into a higher area of management. But Napoleon was a little guy, right? And he managed to take over a great part of the Europe kind of thing. So it can be done, and it just depends on personal attributes and the drive that gets you there. Okay, so speaking of that, this is right out of the slide deck out of topic 8. And look at these things. I'd like you to read them to understand, what are some of those traits? What are employers looking for? Well, they're looking for drive. They're looking for the desire to lead, honesty and integrity, self-confidence, cognitive intelligence, right? Because they know that you're going to make good decisions. They know you're going to be creative in creating, good visions, emotional intelligence. And, this seems to be, from the articles that I'm seeing on my Flipboard and my smartphone, there's a lot to this emotional intelligence that you should explore. Job relevant knowledge and, being an extrovert. And I'll tell you, so my Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENTJ, so the E is for extrovert. But if you take a look at, where I rank on that scale of introvert to extrovert, I'm almost in the middle. And I always called myself a closet introvert because I could speak and I could get out and work a room in terms of facilitate something. But when I leave, I have to recover, and I have to process what went through. And that's the introvert part of me as well. So, it's something to consider that, it's a snapshot of where you are at a certain time. Although I've had several Myers-Briggs evaluations, I keep coming back to the ENTJ. So I guess it's ingrained, but I'm an old guy, right? And you need a certain amount of extroversion. But hey, there's a lot of leaders out there that are introverts, and I can think of one is Harper, who was Prime Minister of Canada a few prime ministers ago, and he was a classic introvert, and a lot of his decisions were made in the office kind of thing. So you can be a strong leader, but that's typical of what organizations are looking at in these 8 attributes that we're talking about. Okay, so here's just a little bit about emotional intelligence. What is it? Self-awareness, self-management, self-motivation, empathy, social skills. So a lot of people out there that are great business people, but have very little social skills and tend to, if I can use this word, tick off people because they're insensitive, right? So recent studies show that emotional intelligence is the best predictor of who will emerge as a leader. So that's something to keep in mind. So now we're going to talk about Lewin's leadership style, and there's three main areas of how he covers this off. So there's autocratic, and then democratic, and laissez-faire. And you can see that there's a lot of highlighting here. So this is obviously very important to really delve into in your topic 8 to really understand that. So autocratic, again, really preoccupied with efficiency and productivity and making quick decisions, and a lot of times just alienate employees because they're micromanaging, because they want to get to that outcome, and they want to get to it fast. And they're, they micromanage a lot doing that. On the democratic, I think this is more where I sit, although that's my predominant style. And it's a lot about team approach and using creativity and engaging employees to really bring the team together and get things done. And oh, by the way, though, there's some risks around that. So social loafing, is sort of not checked as much as it could be, with someone from a democratic style, because they're preoccupied with, trying to engage people and not kind of disciplining people. And I want to talk about that as well, because on the next slide, because I covered social loafing in the team charter, and I'd like you to kind of keep that team charter, for the future, because it has a lot of the constituents of what we're covering in topic 8 here, and then you'll see the connection of why did I get teams to be able to do that, and then the laissez-faire, which if you take a look at it, it almost sounds pejorative, right? It means like you're uncommitted, just let it happen, but it's not that. It's basically around it comes into play when you have very talented subject matter experts that are self-motivated and have knowledge and skills much greater than the manager or leader leading that team. Well, the last thing you want to do is to micromanage those people. They will get unmotivated. They want to be able to produce, and just tell them what you want done and whatever. So that's what the laissez-faire means. All right, but in some cases, if you're too caught up in in the delegating and the skilled and motivation allowance, sometimes you're not looking at the overall productivity, and you might find some disengaged employees. So that's around that. But here's a little bit about social loafing. Here's the definition that's important to you. Social loafing is a term used in social psychology, and it happens when someone puts in less effort when they're judged as part of a group. All right, and I've been on academic teams, when I went through college, where we had some, the odd team that I was in, there was some social loafers, and we called them free riders, and basically we got through, and the predominant people in the group get the work done, and that person would get the same mark, and that's why I was so adamant of putting that social loafing section in the team charter that you had coming together in your threesome or foursome groups. But I strongly encourage you to read that article. Here's the link. It reads in about 4 minutes, but it'll really give you a good sense of how to deal with free riders and what's important. And you'll see in that article a lot of the items that it says to cover are in the learning team charter that I helped develop. Okay, so let's get back to Kurt Lewin. So here's his piece where he had autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire leadership. But they're further characterized by autocratic as authoritarian. So you get to be very directive, if you want to get things done. The democratic is participative, so you're getting input from everyone. And then the laissez-faire is, you're delegating. Why? Because you've got competent, self-motivated subject matter experts that know how to get the job done, and you just give them the tools, and you clear away the barriers, and you find resources for them, and they will do the work, and they will do it great. All right, so that's what to remember around that piece. Here's just an illustration to kind of bring that home. And then I wanted to give you a little bit of helpful hints, hopefully, because trust is a big part of employee engagement. And again, I think I've mentioned this before, is that especially frontline managers in North America, research shows that they're the most trusted level of management in North America. And why? Because most of them are very competent and they're consistent in what they're doing, and they have integrity and they've got character, and they're, you know, they're worried about other people. And I think, you know, if you're just a self-interested individual, you know, people get onto that and they'll become very demotivated if they think that a leader is doing something for their own benefit and not the overall benefit of the team and the overall benefit of the organization. So one thing to remember as a leader manager is being other people centered. And, you know, if you're earnest about that, it'll go a long way in creating loyalty. And when you create loyalty, it's because you've created trust, and then you'll get things done, you know, a lot more effectively and a lot more efficiently. All right, so that's the helpful hints. Hopefully, there's nothing on the test about this, but I wanted to share that with you because I think trust is the currency, you know, that you use in leadership and management, and it's so important. So there's a few other slides I'm just going to scream through, so it breaks down each area to, you know, to give you some more, you know, that elaborates more on what competency is, elaborates more on what consistency is all about, integrity and compassion and character. So that's where we'll leave that. And now we'll get back to, you know, the theorists. And Blake and Mouton, I think it's Mouton, M-O-U-T-O-N, but they tried to put together a grid that really kind of showed, you know, the bookends, so to speak, the ranges of, you know, the concern for people, which is, you know, on the vertical axis, and the task orientation, which you can't see on this slide, but the task orientation, you know, that people, you know, if you're really task oriented, or if it's really, yeah, you'll be on this, you know, on the right side of the axis, and if it's, you know, lower task orientation, it'll be on the left-hand side. All right. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to find a leadership approach, you know, in between McGregor's X and Y theories, and that, I guess, again, I'm just flipping here, is, you know, an important concept to understand. You see that it's all highlighted in yellow. We picked this up in topic 7, but let's just quickly review. So, you know, theory X is about having the assumptions that employees dislike working, they avoid responsibility, they have to be forced or controlled or threatened, you know, to deliver what's needed, you know, those kind of things. Whereas on theory Y, you know, your assumptions are on your followers they're self-motivated, they're creative, they take responsibility, they don't need very much direction, you know, they seek and accept responsibility, and they consider work as a natural part of life and solve problems. Okay, so, you know, so if you take a look at this grid, you'll see that on theory X, well, very high concern for people, and very task oriented. So that's where theory Y would fit on this grid. And then if you take a look at theory X, well, very low concern for people, because you assume that, hey, they have to be driven, very high on task. So what are you doing? You're very directive. You're very dictatorial on this theory X. And then you can see that here, this is sort of status quo. This is middle of the road. And then on this side, where, you know, it's less task driven, but really high on accommodating, you know, sometimes you know, you lose in terms of productivity outcome. And then this is a very undesirable place to be, where you have little concern for the people and little concern for getting the task done, so that you know, you're not getting very much done. So that's, you know, that's a big kind of approach to bring in, you know, a lot more of those theories together to see where they are relative to each other. Okay, so you can read this slide and get a sense of what being indifferent and accommodating and dictatorial and status quo is all about. I hope I explained them, quite well right now, but you can review that on your piece. I'm just going to have a little sip of water here. Now, I'm going at a fairly fast clip. I'm maybe a third the way through the slides. So how are we doing? Am I talking too fast, or am I okay? Do I see some thumbs up? Can you understand me? Okay, all right, thanks, Deva. Okay, so let's talk about contingency theories, and you can see again there's some highlighting going on. The Fiedler contingency model, and you're going to be going through participation activity 8A, and you're going to learn a little bit more about Fiedler, and you're going to talk about we're going to talk about situational leadership and path goal theory, and when we talk about situational leadership, we're going to be talking more about, let me just flip ahead here. We're going to be talking about Hershey and Blanchard, right? And a little more about that piece. Okay. So, so let me talk about the participation topic 8A. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing a survey, and that survey is found, just underneath the post for the topic A, and you go into that survey and then you fill it out. And then what I want you to do is just calculate, your survey result. And then, so once you do that survey result, you'll see that essentially, if your score is 73 or above, you're considered a relationship-oriented leader. And then if you're below 54 or whatever, you're considered tasked. So I want you to provide the score, tell me what type of leader that you are, but then tell me just one or two sentences, do those results correlate with the previous survey findings about yourself? If so, why? And why you think it, you fit. And if not, tell me why you don't think it fits. And that's going to be a revelation in itself. So that's what I'd like you to do on that particular participation activity. Okay, so let's talk about Fiedler's approach to contingency leadership. Again, we've got some highlighting here and some underlining. So what does that do? That approach, it defines leadership styles and different types of situations. Okay, so you have a different situation, you need to apply the appropriate leadership style to engage employees and affect their behaviors, given that situation, and so that you identify that appropriate style. All right. Okay. So what you're going to find then, so here's the numbers. So when you do this LPC survey, if your score is less than 64, then greater than 64. If your score is greater than 64, you're a relationship-oriented style, and if you're less than 57, then you're a task-oriented style. So that's how you understand where you are. And again, that could change. You can change your whole management approach 10 years from now. So it's not static. It's it could be different later on, but that's the snapshot that you're at this point in time, and so you deal with it. So if you take a look at Fiedler's approach, in terms of what are some of the attributes needed in the situation. One is the leader-member relations. The degree of confidence and trust and respect the employees have for their leader. And so you'll take a look at, poor to good performance. And again, in terms of, the complexity of the task. So you take a look at task structure. In this part of the area, it's high structure. In this quadrant, it's low structure. In this quadrant, it's high and it's low. And then the power that you have, the position power as a leader, over the activities and related to hiring and firing and leverage you have on the employees, and that's, that changes as you go along. So what this drawing is showing you is that, if you're a task-oriented person, you're going to perform really well, when leader-member relations are good, and you're going to perform, really well when task structure is very high, and then you can see how it, it starts coming down. And then, with your position power, it's not that bad. But what this tells you is that in this moderate area, if you're a task-oriented you're not going to be able to manage, very good performance. So ergo, you need to change your style, right? Whereas if you're a relationship-oriented, in these first sets of conditions, you're not doing really well. But in these moderate pieces, you're doing really well from a relationship-oriented. And then as you get, on the highly unfavorable, you're not doing well anymore. So again, that tells you, okay, so in these situations, you need a shift, to being more of a task-oriented style to be able to make it work. So it really gives you a sense of, what the situations will require, and in terms of what style adaptation you need to make to be able to deal with those situations. Okay, so again, some more definitions to kind of understand, and they're highlighted. So a leadership theory that focuses on the readiness of the followers. So it's follower driven, all right? And what's that readiness? It's the extent to which people have the ability and the willingness. Sometimes they have a lot of ability and they just don't want to do it. Other times they might not have the ability, but they really want to do it. And you need to be able to adjust your management style to accommodate those kind of situations. All right, so here's the adjusting to the appropriate leadership style, so that right here, let's talk about the telling. So what that means is, on the telling side, it's that followers are unable and unwilling, and they're insecure followers. So what does that mean then? You need to be almost autocratic. You need specific directions, to affect their behaviors. And so you can work that through in this 2x2 matrix. All right, and that brings into Hershey and Blanchard. And they've adopted this, and they define their coordinates. So if you look at, let's go R1D1, so you have followers that are unable and unwilling to take the responsibility. So how does this translate? I'm showing you. So R1D1, it means that their performance readiness is really low. They're unable and willing to take responsibility. And the thing is that they're developing their skills. So what you need to do is you need to get into selling to be able to get them to a high task and high relationship outcome. All right, so understand the way the flows go, because this is going to come in handy. You can see there's a lot of highlighting in this slide, and then we get to House's path goal theory, and the leader's job. Again, the leader's job is to assist the follower. It's follower driven in attaining their goals and to provide the necessary direction and support. And the thing is, it assumes the same leader can display any of the leadership styles depending on the situation to achieve this, for the follower. Okay, and so here's the 4 areas that House has come up with. It's the directive, you let subordinates know what's expected of them. You schedule work, you make it work for them. Supportive is you show concern and the need for followers. Participative is, they're probably very talented people. So you get into a situation where you'll get input from them. And then achievement oriented, you set challenging goals and expect the followers to perform their work at the highest level. But again, situational variables break down into two areas. The personal characteristics, those are individuals, different motivation, the readiness and role identity. And then there's always these environmental factors that make up, the impact on that situation. And so that you could take a look at maybe the organization isn't structured well enough. So that you have to make some compensation in the roles and responsibilities. Maybe you don't have the available resources because you're into a budget crunch or whatever, or you've got some collaboration programs. So that's the situation you have to deal with, and then work through the followers in terms of their motivation, their readiness, and their role identity. We talked about this in topic 7 in terms of this expectancy model. And the thing that you really need to understand in Vroom's expectancy model is that the organizational rewards are not significant enough sometimes, to get things done, and you need to understand that piece. And in this piece here, this is a really good format to be able to understand, if the follower lacks self-confidence, this is a little yellow arrow here. What do you, as a leader, well, you need supportive leadership. And how does that impact the... Sorry? Okay. Okay, so the, what you're doing as a supportive leader, you're increasing the confidence of that follower to achieve the work outcome. So kind of go through this as well to understand where that goes. And again, let's, put the two together again. And we talked about the subordinate's personality and the characteristics of the environment. And that's, the key things that you need to focus on, and some examples around, a task that needs to be a high structure, in terms of directive leadership. If it's high structure, then directive leadership is not required. But if it's low structure, yeah, you need to really tell them, what's going on. Okay. And then understand, transactional leadership versus transformational leadership. In transactional, that's leaders who guide and motivate their followers in direction of established goals by clarifying role and task requirements. So it's a negotiation, right? Where transformational, it's the leader inspires those followers, to get over their self-interest, to be part of that shared vision, for the good of the organization, and that has profound and extraordinary effects on their followers. So if you take a look at now charismatic versus visionary, well, you can see that Elon Musk is a visionary, but he's more of a transactional type of leader. But he can create that ability to articulate this vision, and then people see, what's in it for them. But Bezos is a type of person who, he infuses, that inspiration into people, and influences people in a very different way. So that's kind of understanding the distinctions around those pieces of management styles. So let's talk about leading teams, and again, lots of highlight on this one. But what are the priorities of team leaders? They're not the classic manager anymore. They're more of the facilitator, right? So what are they doing is they're managing the team's external boundaries to make sure that the conditions are right for the team, and they're facilitating that team process. So what do? This is key now, right? The leadership roles. Well, they liaison and with what external constituencies. So that would mean, they would liaison with, if they were, let's just say a sales department, they would liaise with the marketing department to make sure that the salespeople have all the collateral information to be able to be more effective in making sales. So the marketing department is a constituency, for the sales organization that team leader that leads that sales organization has to deal with. or just troubleshooting and you know, getting barriers out of the way, managing conflict inside the group, and doing a lot of coaching. So that's key in terms of team leaders in today's world. And you got to understand that there's groups versus team. So if you have a work team, you know, that's a collective thing. Everybody's got each other's back. You know, the synergy is very positive, and the accountability is, you know, there's a lot of peer pressure in there, a lot of individual and mutual accountability. And the skills are, what does it take to get the job done? So very complementary. Whereas in a work group, you know, think of sort of a call center, all right? They share information, you know, they're on the same platform. They just do their job, so there's not too much synergy going on, you know, because they're individual practitioners, you know, getting you know, satisfying customers, you know, by a, you know, a one-to-one phone call. Their accountability is individual, and their skills are random and varied, right? They're not trying to support someone else in the call center. They need what they need to be able to do their job, right? So that's kind of the distinctions between groups and teams. Okay, so let's talk about Tuckman's stage of group of development. Can I just see maybe any kind of thumbs up on how many people have learned about Tuckman's stages of group development: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning? How many people? Can I see some thumbs up? Is there, you know, have you heard about this before? Okay, that's what I was finding in the, you know, in the classes. All right, okay, so you know, so I got 2. Okay, that's good. All right, so let me just explain that, because this tool is very very useful, especially for, you know, managers, leaders coming into a new job and creating this new team. And if you understand the stages of this team growth, then you know you'll be able to know when certain things can be done to be able to finally getting the team to perform. So let's just start with forming. So you know, day one, you got this new job. You have 4 or 5 people coming in that your direct reports, and you want to start meeting and working a plan. But you know, human nature, these 4 or 5 people, they don't know you, they don't know each other in some cases. They come in, and what are they doing? I mean, they're sizing each other up, right? They're saying, well, you know, what's this person like, or whatever. And you've got to start, you know, setting up, you know, some ground rules. Okay, so you know, here's the task. This is what we're going to be doing. We need to, you know, get this plan together, and here's some key deliverables and targets that we have to reach by the end of the year, right? It's still very uncertain, and people don't know, you know, where they stand and how they're going to work together or whatever. So that, you know, a week goes by and they starting to work, and then people are starting to find their place, you know, and then some people want to be the boss. Some people, you know, want set standards to work from. Other people, you know, just, hey, whatever you got to do, you know, let's get it done. And that's storming. And that storming part, you know, that's when the conflict comes up. And as a manager, I just want to show you this because it's highlighted. All right, you know, let this happen. This storming is, there's conflict, there's increased, you know, they're looking for increased clarity on the purpose. There's some power struggles going on. There needs to be some coaching. So communication of feelings and view themselves as individuals, resist control by group leaders. There's intergroup conflict. But as a manager, you know, you got to let this happen, because if you don't, if you don't let these issues kind of get on top of the table, you know, they will submerge and they will come back and haunt you. So the storming part of getting the group together is very important to kind of get it all out in the open. So then you can start norming, right? And what norming is, you start setting up norms for how you're going to behave. You know, how are you going to get this work done? You know, what kind of rules are you going to follow? What kind of standards are you going to do? How are you going to get this, you know, how are we going to work together? And then once you get that going, then the group, you know, starts to be able to perform and work as a team. But what I found in my experience is that you come to the end of the project and people don't want to let go, especially if it's a really successful project. They don't want to let go and they want to keep this thing going. And you have to understand about, there's a time where you say, yeah, we're done and we gotta hand this off, and we gotta put the project in a way that when we hand it off, the people that are going to take it on and institutionalize that work inside of the organization, they've got the tools and the methods and whatever they need to get it done. So adjourning is just as important, in terms of getting the team to perform really well, but really understanding, how they've done, and then turning it over and really recognizing members' contributions and celebrating their success, right, which is really important. So have a look at this piece. You can see that, on adjourning, you have task completions, you have some recognition around that, and you have the devices to be able to hand it over and find closure, so that you can go on to the next project or whatever. So Tuckman stages of group development. I've used it, in terms of the insights in many of the situations that I went through in my career. Okay, here's a little piece. I keep coming back to this. This is helpful hints. Hopefully, again, it has nothing to do with test number 2. But if you go through this, I'd like you to kind of take a look at, review all these different values and pick out your 3 top values, your core values, and then identify them, because everybody has a different definition of authenticity. So when if that's your top goal, define what authenticity means to you, and maybe your second goal is honesty. Define what honesty means to you, and then understand the order of those core values, and then based on those core values, write out a state of personal purpose, and then create your own personal purpose statement. You can share it. This is part of a workshop that I ran. But essentially, what that's going to do is give you a sense of really who you are, and then how do you fit in a particular organization. And why I'm saying that is that, if you're looking at positions beyond, the program when you get out there and in your career environment, strongly consider looking at, a few alternatives and not just pick the first one that comes along, so that you could best fit, your personal traits, your fallback, management style will fit in an organization to do well for you, rather than starting a job that has great pay and great benefits and finding out 8 months later that it's not exactly, fits with your personality and whatever. So that will really go a long way in helping you. Okay, so now I'm getting into, and I'm running out of time. So again, I'm gonna kind of go through this a little quicker if I can. But you need to understand the difference between transformation and change management. And I've given you a link here, and this is a Deloitte ebook. It reads really fast. But what is business transformation? Opportunity to find a bold ambition that goes beyond incremental change, and the opportunity to rethink your business and operating models to deliver breakthrough value. So it's strategic, and it'll affect the growth of your organization and the performance. So that's key. So understand the difference between change and transformation. Change are the tools, driven by tactics, fixes past and current. Where transformation, it creates the future. So understand that piece. Both are important to organizations to stay competitive and adaptive. And again, the only constant in life is change in today's world, and change cycles are shortening, by the day. So understand that piece in terms of organizational change, any alteration of people structure, technology in the organization. And I have a fair amount of experience because it came out of my total quality management background, where I was chosen to be a change agent in certain areas. And one thing to remember about a change agent is that you act as a catalyst, and you assume responsibility for managing the change process. And oh, by the way, there's some people out there who don't want to change, and they see you as the enemy. So just remember that, and you've got to massage that, to show them, WIIFM, what's in it for them in this change, and work with them, with what's going on. So that's a key piece. So understand that piece. But here's something, is that understand what drives change right from the start. Why are we doing this? It gets back to the why. And sometimes it's external change that impacts a need for internal change to do something different. And what I mean by external change, well, maybe you're in a particular business and the government decides that it's going to regulate your output. Well, that calls for a way to redefine the business. So that's an internal change that you have to meet the external regulation thing. And so there'll be external forces, external changes, the marketplace, government laws, technology, labor markets, economic changes, and then internal forces where you need to change the strategy. In some cases, your old strategy has become irrelevant, and you need to just change that inside. Or change your workforce, because now, if you've got disruptive technologies that are displacing your product sales, something has come out that is better, faster, cheaper, so that you've got to do something. Well, it means that you've got to get up to speed or change the products, and that means changing the workforce in terms of skills and core competencies, and in some cases just changing employee attitudes, because you need to take a more competitive stand to be able to survive. So that's key. So there was a lot of research done around 97% of projects in North America fail. I think it was that kind of number. And they said, well, why? Well, a lot of people say, yeah, it's the technology. If we had better technology, we could have been successful. And they say, well, no, it's the infrastructure. If we would have had more support and whatever, we could have, or better investment, we could have got through this process. And then others be, well, no, it's our change management process. Okay, but look at the realities. The realities were change management, is the really big thing. This is around the people, and technology is not as impactful as really getting the employees to change their approach to what needs to be done. That's why effort fails, because they don't understand the importance of change management. Okay, and what you're looking at commitment versus compliance. All right, so let me talk about compliance. So I don't know if any of you have heard this before, but they used to talk about in my organization, flavor of the month. Oh yeah, the leadership wants to do this, but you know what? It will pass. Next month they'll be on to something else. So I'll kind of make it look like I'm agreeing compliance, but it's going to go away. So why should I commit to it? So that commitment building costs are significantly less than managing post-implementation resistance. So what you need to do again is get back to, WIIFM, what's in it for the follower, what's in it for me, and explain this change and get into the why of what needs to be done so people can commit to that. They'll be engaged and they see themselves as part of that new vision and are excited about wanting to bring this through. And that's that's what you're looking for. So why do people resist change? Uncertainty. I know a lot of the transformations that I was involved with, in my former career, people were worried about losing their jobs. Oh, am I going to be displaced? Well, hang on. I used to have this big budget, and now my budget is cut in half. Does that mean I have less influence in this organization? That's personal loss. Or they're thinking, you know what, this is wrong. We're taking the the organization into the wrong direction. Some people are really earnest about seeing that and thinking that that's wrong, so they'll resist the change instead of getting on board. So these are all the things, you know, the techniques to take a look at. I strongly recommend that you read this piece around that. And here's what to understand about change. You know, we talk about picking the low-hanging fruit. And what does that mean? It means that you start with changes that are doable so that you can create a success track. And you know, part of my master's thesis was around strategic planning as a change management driver. And I studied this Jane Dutton, and what she talked about is that if you're trying to bring in a certain change, it has to be doable, and there has to be some urgency about it, you know. And you know, urgency is, you know, these sales that you hear is, oh yeah, you know, it's a midnight madness, you know, come in Friday night, and it's only Friday night, and you'll buy a television for 50% off. You know, that's urgency. You know, we've seen how that works. So it's got to be doable, because if the stretch is too high, people will say, you know, I'm overwhelmed. There's no way we can do that. So it's doable, and it's got to be urgent. And that will give you, you know, a higher leverage of getting the change done. And here's another piece to understand. And, you know, I learned this through Accenture consultant. I worked with a lot of consultants as an internal consultant in some of the roles that I had. And if you take a look at the performance and the time it takes to make the change, when you first start changing, and people don't, some people start, they don't realize what they're, you know, they're losing or what they're gaining. And then, you know, you start detecting the barriers, and what will happen is your performance, you know, of the organization will drop. And Accenture used to call this the valley of despair. But here's the thing, this happens in every project. So if you have the insights of a good leader, good manager, you'll know that it's coming, and you'll prepare the organization, you know, for that dip in organizational performance. And what you do is you celebrate every win that you can possibly, you know, celebrate, to be able to give people the confidence and get them up this curve again, to when they start understanding that, hey, that this is working, you know. And so here's like the change curve. You know, what you're doing is, you know, they're into shock and denial, you know, and down here they're into like a disruption, and then all of a sudden they start seeing, oh yeah, this is working, you know, I can accept that, and then you start really getting the commitment. So that's what that's all about. So just understanding, you know, the change process itself, and preempting, you know, some of the, you know, the downturns of that change will go a long way in being successful in creating that successful change. And here what you need to do is, you know, you understand the phases, and what you're, you know, in those pieces where at the end of the day what you've done is you institutionalize that new best practice, that new result of the transformation, so that you can lock it in, and then people will internalize it, and then that becomes, well, this is the way we do business around here again, you know. And we're going to get into Lewin's thing about that, and this is important, and you can see there's a lot of yellow in here, and that's just what I talked about, is that, you know, you unfreeze, and, you know, you gather data, and you show the compelling reasons why the organization needs to change. Then you actually do the change, you know, the learning process, the action planning, the action steps, and then, you know, you evaluate the change, you know, you get these behavior changes done, you have measurement in place, and then you refreeze it, you lock it in, you institutionalize it, you know. So really it's, you know, you're looking at this timeline right here, you know, those three phases where, you know, this refreezing is right up here in terms of that. One of the things I'll put you on to is there's a book that really helped me, and not only that, it'll help you in life as well. William Bridges, a fitting name. You know, he talked about, you know, bridging the you know, managing transitions, and this is the bridge. And you've got to understand and recognize that you're going through endings and you're working towards the new beginnings. And what you do in the neutral zone is you work with what's going to stay with the organization that's been really successful. So the only example I can give you around that, let's just make it personal. So you're going through a divorce, but you've always gone to the gym, and the gym made you feel good. And so you got to end that relationship, but you keep going to the gym, during the neutral zone, and that helps you start that new beginning. And it's no different in corporate. What is it? You might have, great HR group that knows how to engage people. Well, you keep using that strength through the transition from the ending of the old behaviors to the new beginning of the new behaviors that reflect the transformation outcome. Okay, so that's that piece. I'm not going to talk about this, but here, change capable organizations do the following, and you got to keep on communicating, but you ensure that, that you have diverse teams. You encourage the mavericks. Those are the thought leaders, and the thought leaders, if you can engage the thought leaders in your organization, and thought leaders are not necessarily managers or whatever, it's the people in the organization that other employees look up to. And use those people, you convince them, and then they become your advocates and will work for you in making that change. But just back to this piece is that, there's a certain thing called change readiness. And if you keep on driving in your organization more and more change, people get fatigued. They say, hey, we just can't do anymore. So you need to take a look at how to reinvigorate and let some of those major changes, get through their paces before you, put on another layer of change. And all these things, these different components will help in terms of giving you that readiness to be able to take the next change going through. And here's some stats on, look at this, 70% of change initiatives fail. All those reasons, it's because you're not set up in here in terms of having, the stakeholder commitment and good communication and good change leadership accountability and all those other things. So again, communicate. Have a look at this slide. It's gonna get you through. And again, too, is that understand, the channels that you communicate through, and what is effective communication. And here's a key thing to understand is that, when you send a message, the message receiver decodes that message. And if there's some emotions involved in there, they can interpret that message in two ways. They can see it as positive, or they can see it as negative. And you can see that I want you to read this stuff here. It's highly highly highlighted, right? And then here, in terms of creating a shared vision, there's a technique called appreciative inquiry, and you should know what appreciative inquiry is all about. But it's a way of engaging people into understanding on how they can see themselves as part of the division, as the part of the vision. It's got to be a shared vision. And appreciative inquiry shows, its foundation is, the glass is half full, it's not half empty. So here's what we have going for us. Find the bright spots in our organization that we can leverage to get through this transformation. Because there's things that are going on in the organization that really work. You find out what they are, you find out how they're doing it, and then you incorporate those best practices in other parts of the organization to move that transformation along, right? That's what the basis of appreciative inquiry is all about. And then in terms of creativity and innovation, creativity is the ability to produce novel and useful ideas. And the thing is that you understand the creative process. There's preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. And I've kind of highlighted this part. You should understand what illumination is. That's like, hey, this is working. So how can we leverage this, to get it, to a commercial commercial acceptance and production and sales. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'll get you to go through these slides in terms of coverage, and so that you can do that participation 8B. The rest of these slides here in terms of alignment, I didn't have time to cover it. It's not part of the test, but it's sort of enforcing, how to get the things. All right, so we're pretty well there, but understand, what clan culture is, what adhocracy culture is, market culture, and hierarchy culture. Clan culture is, that's where you have elders in the organization, and you manage by expectations, and people will follow that. Adhocracy, that's taking the risk in that an entrepreneurial group that get the job done. The market culture is what does the customer want, and the hierarchy culture is on stability and effectiveness, and you need command and control in certain organizations. So I think that's about it for this. So just remember to go through, look at the highlights, look at what's underlined, find more information in the slide decks that are in the topics of 5, 6, 7, 8. The test is at one day, one time. It's on March the 13th next week at the beginning of the webinar. It's an 80-minute long test, 50 multiple choice and a few like a combination of 50 of multiple choice and true and false up to 50 questions. And again, remember that the test will self-submit after 80 minutes. So be there on time, please. Make sure that your device is ready in terms of your webcam and your browser, and is all set up to be able to do the test. And if you have any questions, please email me, and I'd be happy to kind of add any clarity going on. And again, this particular lecture, again, will be put on the on my channel on YouTube, and you'll be able to review that as well at your leisure, or let your colleagues know if they missed this webinar, they can go to those links as well, and I'll put the announcement out for that, and you'll see an announcement out for the test. Okay,
sir,
so
sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about the Revel surveys.
Yes.
Do we need to screenshot the results, and where should we submit it?
Okay, so what you need to do is, if you go to topic 13, you'll see the participation topic 13B. And what I'd recommend is don't put individual screenshots. Take a screenshot of the, your test results, say, and then put that on maybe one PDF document of all the tests that you've done. And then it's just one document that you have to do. But the instructions are there. The instructions are also about that 13B are in the course outline as well. So if you access the course outline, the exact instructions that are in the course outline are dictated on 13B. Okay?
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Okay, so good luck on the test. Your stream did fairly well on test number 1. I'm hoping you'll keep up the pace and be the standard for the rest of the streams, okay? We'll talk to you later. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you're welcome.